Hey everyone, and welcome to the Knowledge Portal video series. So today we are going to talk about Introduction to Cloud Computing. So before we go ahead and understand what cloud computing is, it is necessary to go a little step behind to understand what was there before cloud computing came into picture. So nowadays, if you look in most of the places that you go, everyone is talking about cloud and cloud computing. So cloud is something which has really changed the entire market in today's era. So let's get started with cloud computing. So let's take a simple requirement where your company wants to host their own website. Now this is the age where cloud computing was not there. So we are going a bit behind. Okay. So your company wants to host their own website. So typically this requirement will go to the system administrator who is working in the organization. So what system administrator will do? So if you want to host your own website, you need some kind of a server on top of which you'll host your own website. Okay. So what you'll do is, or what system administrator will do is, he'll either choose a data center. So either he'll choose to buy the own server or he'll choose to rent the server. So there are two options. You can either buy a server or you can rent a server. So let me show you on what I mean by this. So generally we used to buy the server in my previous organization that I used to work with. So we used to buy our own server online or offline. And once we buy the server, it's quite costly. It's around 3 lakh rupees. So once you buy the own server, you bring the server, you either host it on your own organization network or you host it into the data center. So this is first approach of buying the server. The second approach is you rent the server. So this is OVH. OVH is one of the very big data centers which are available in today's world, and they provide you servers for rent. So if you typically look a 64 GB RAM server, it's around 299 euros per month, quite expensive. But thing is, you don't really have to worry about buying your own server and those things. So two approaches: you buy your own server or you rent the server on a monthly basis depending upon your requirement. Once you decide with which approach you will go, you typically send the inquiry. So once you choose the data center, you typically send the inquiry about your requirements, and then the price negotiation and all those things will go on. So if you're wondering what a data center is, so this is what data center typically looks like, where if you see, there are thousands of servers which are typically there within a single data center. So they'll give you a rack for rent. So if you see, all of these are one individual server, and each of these servers are connected to some kind of a LAN environment. Data center will provide you with internet to the server. Data center will provide you with a consistent power backup to your server. So if one power line fails, there is always a second power line which is present. Data center will give you all the air conditioning which is needed for the server. And this is one of the reasons why they'll charge you for renting a particular rack where you can place your server. Okay. So this is the data center based approach. Now there is one problem. What happens if the data center goes down? Right? So if a data center goes down, then all the servers which are present over here, they'll go down. And this has actually happened a lot of times. Might be due to natural calamity like earthquakes or some kind of a disaster, due to which data center can go down. So this is one major challenge. The second major challenge is scalability. Now, this is one of the picture where you generally have issue with the server, because if you are buying your own server, and if you have put it inside the data center, what happens at, let's assume at night 12 o'clock your server has stopped working. And this actually has happened. I still remember at night I was sleeping and I got a call that the website is down. And our server was in the data center and we had no clue because the monitoring system was also showing that server has stopped responding. So we system administrator, we were 3 people. We took the car, we went to the data center. It took around 30 minutes for us to get access to the server. We connected to the server with this kind of a workstation, and it came out that the operating system had failed. So there was some kind of a kernel panic due to which the system was not booting up. So we fixed it and we went back home and then we slept. So it took us around 2 to 3 hours to do that. A very painful approach. Anyways, since now we are in cloud, these things really don't come into picture. So coming back to the scalability point that we were discussing, let's assume that it is a new year and there is a big promotion that is going on. Now, due to the big promotion, it is expected there is lot of traffic increase that will be happening. And this is the reason why a server capacity needs to be increased from, let's assume, 4 GB RAM to 32 GB RAM. So a simple scenario, there is a big promotion that is going on, and due to which you need to increase the capacity from 4 GB RAM to 32 GB RAM. Now in the data center provided approach, you buy a 32 GB RAM stick from the market, you go to the data center, you open up your server, you install that 32 GB RAM stick and you start the server again. Okay, a very tedious and very painful approach. So this is the first approach. In the second approach, which is the hosting provided way, so this is approach of OVH or all those host providers, where we typically raise a support ticket and we generally expect a response, maybe if you're lucky 15 minutes, or normally it is around 12 hours. So you raise a support ticket saying that you want to increase the capacity of your server, and then you get those hosting providers to increase the capacity of your server. So this typically ranges from maybe 12 hours to 24 hours. The third way is the cloud way, where you stop the server, you change the instance size to whatever you need and you start the server. So this approach, the cloud way approach, just takes around 2 to 3 minutes maximum. And let me show you this. So this is the AWS console. So if you see, I have 2 servers over here, OpenVPN and KP Labs. So let's talk about KP Labs. So you see it is T2.micro. T2.micro means it is 1 GB RAM server. So let's assume that there is a promotion coming up and I need to increase the capacity. So what I have to do, I have to right click over here, go to instance setting, select change instance type, and it is showing you the current instance type over here, which is T2.micro. You click here, and if you see, it is giving you various instance type which are available. Some of them are like 256 GB RAM also. But for our test purpose, we will select m4.xlarge, which is 16 GB RAM. I'll select this. I'll click on apply. It might take around few seconds. And now you see the capacity of this server has increased from 1 GB RAM to 16 GB RAM within few seconds only. Okay, so this is the cloud way, and this is one of the ways which is really useful for the organization as well as for the individuals. So coming back to the PowerPoint presentation, this scalability is something which is really important, and this is one of the reasons why Cloudway is really booming up in today's industry. So let's start with cloud computing. So cloud computing by its definition is a model in which computing resources are made available as a service. So we'll look into this into much more detail into upcoming lectures. But there are three important characteristics that you need to understand if you want to know what exactly cloud computing is. The first characteristic is on-demand and self-serviced. So what do I mean by on-demand? So let's assume right now I need one more server which has 32 GB RAM in next 5 minutes. So that is what is called as on-demand. So I want the server right now, I get the server right now. So that is on-demand. Self-service means if I want the server right now, I do not have to wait for the hosting provider support to give me that server. I should be able to launch my own server whenever I want. So at middle of the night, I want a 32 GB RAM server. I should be able to launch it without any intervention of a hosting provider. So that is called as on-demand and self-service. The second characteristic is called as elasticity. Elasticity is a very important characteristic of cloud computing, which basically means that a service can scale up and it can scale down anytime I want. So if I want a 64 GB RAM server only for 3 hours, then I should be able to do that. And after 3 hours, I can scale it down back to 1 GB RAM. So if I want to scale up, I should be able to do that. I want to scale down, I should be able to do that. So that is the second important characteristic of cloud computing. And the third important characteristic of cloud computing is measured service, which means pay what you use. So if I'm using 64 GB RAM server for 1 hour, I should be charged only for 1 hour. And generally, if you go into the hosting provider, if you look over here, they charge per month basis. You see, they don't charge per hour. So even if I'm using this 64 GB RAM server only for 1 hour, still I have to pay entire 299 euros. So if you see, it does not fit the third characteristic of cloud computing, which is measured service. Pay what you use. So let me open up DigitalOcean. I'll open up digitalocean.com. This is one of the very amazing cloud providers out there. So if I look into the pricing, you see they are charging per hour $0.007 per hour. So this is measured service. If you are using per hour, you only pay for that particular hour. Okay, so these are the three important characteristics of a cloud computing provider. So if a hosting provider wants to be called as cloud computing provider, then they have to ensure that they follow all of these three characteristics. And once they follow these three characteristics, they can call themselves as a cloud computing provider. So you have various cloud computing provider like AWS, DigitalOcean, Linode. All of those cloud computing provider has all of these three characteristics available. So this is the basic about introduction to cloud computing. Now this is a very high level overview. In the upcoming lectures, we'll go in much more detail related to the cloud computing platform. So I hope this has been useful to you. Now again, we are going from absolute start so that we have a very solid foundation for cloud computing when we go further into much more advanced topics. So this is it. If you have any questions, doubts, suggestions, feel free to contact us on Twitter, Facebook, or even LinkedIn, or feel free to mail us at instructors@kplabs.in. So I hope this has been useful for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.